horror is now in Dead by Daylight, with our newest chapter and killer for the Kasu, and Kasu is pretty freaking cool. Unfortunately, she is currently perceived now as the strongest, most obnoxious, and most unversatile killer in Dead by Daylight's history due to adjustments that were made from her PTB to live servers. But today we are not going to discuss about the Kasu. We are going to discuss and rant about how angry I am with the treatment of Unknown in this game. First of all, what the fuck is BHVR's problem with the Unknown? Like, seriously. Especially because of the fact that with Kasu, she has two stances. She has her body form where she acts and maneuvers around maps like a regular M1 killer, and she has a M2 ability called Regurgitate, which shoots out leeches that will attach to survivors. But the thing is, we think that it is similar to how Unknown's UVX power works, meaning, you know, she probably shouldn't be able to get direct infection if she aims directly at survivors with her power, but no, she is able and allowed to get direct infection with survivors, and is allowed to bounce the regurgitation of the leeches on a vertical wall, and if a survivor is within a specific range of that impact on a vertical wall, it will start auto-aiming to the survivor within a certain range. This removes all possible skill expression and all possible and potential skill transfer of playing Unknown to playing Kasu. So this is a very cool thing, and you know, I was a little mad about that. Then other adjustments happened to Unknown. So we did get the additional refresh of weakened from healthy to injured from 6 seconds to 8 seconds, and you know, that's a nice little adjustment. You know, not a whole lot, but it'll at least give a little bit more breathing room if you injure survivor who is just a few frames away from fully removing weakened, and so maybe you'll be able to break line of sight a little quicker and be able to down the survivor while they're still weakened with UVX. But no, that doesn't seem to really do much, because they've also decided to do what I like to call spreadsheet balancing for 3 add-ons that did not need to be changed. Vanishing Box was nerfed yet again from an 80% debuff for how long the first hallucination takes to spawn in a trial to 120%. Base kit, a hallucination without any weaken takes 45 seconds to spawn in a trial, and if you run Vanishing Box as it is, without weakening a survivor, it takes up to 99 seconds for your first hallucination to drop in a trial. They have also nerfed Blurry Photo yet again, with a partial base kit added to Unknown's post-teleport cooldown from 1.4 seconds to 1.3 seconds. So yay, it's a little nicer now, but also at this point just completely remove Blurry Photo and make the post-teleport cooldown 1.2 seconds. And then they decided to nerf Slash Backpack, which is one of the most detrimental and useless add-ons you could ever ask for on Unknown. It sucks. And then, discovered by my lovely friend, Brandon Wispfell, they shadow nerfed Captured by the Dark, an iridescent add-on when used by the Unknown, starts all survivors in a trial fully weakened, with the removal of a hallucination with your workable hallucinations from 4 to 3. It now takes twice as long for your hallucination to drop in a trial from spawning into the trial. This was not posted in the PTB patch notes. This was not posted in the live patch notes. And we have posted a lot of player feedback as both Unknown mains and Unknown players, and there just seems to be a blatant disrespect of time, effort, and energy put into this killer at all. Especially in my case, because I have made 2 montages of this killer, and I love this killer so much, I decided to put its P100 date on my birthday, because that's how much I care and adore this killer, as not only a killer in Dead by Daylight, but as a character in of itself. So what do? Well, I would like to send a list of changes I'd like to apply to Unknown, as someone who's been playing Unknown since its PTB, and like I mentioned earlier, just make Unknown's post-teleport cooldown 1.2 seconds, and rework Blurry Photo into something else. Into what? I don't know, because I don't know what else to change this add-on into at the moment. I would like to rework Vanishing Box entirely into something else, and again, I just don't know what to change it into because I've got frickin' nothing. And then with slash backpack, just make it so that you don't destroy your hallucinations with UVX, but make it so that your UVX projectile can bounce off the hallucinations. This can add an extra dimension of playing the killer with an add-on that changes the projectile bounce and makes, you know, looping survivors more interesting. It can also passively add more threat to the hallucinations when they spawn within a tile. And beyond that, from beyond add-ons, I would like to change some base kit stuff with Unknown. I would like to lower the lingering weaken removal buffer from 1.25 seconds to 1 second. But if lowering the buffer is out of the question, I want to increase the total time to remove weaken from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. And then, if increasing the total weaken removal time and lowering the removal buffer is out of the question, simply lower the UVX cooldown from 7 seconds to 6 seconds. And beyond that, let's add a radial indicator that works exactly like how Ghostface's radial indicator works while he's in stealth when a survivor is trying to break him out of stealth when they're looking at him. If we add this, it'll give a killer player as the Unknown the two choices to either search for an object to break line of sight away from a survivor, or to then seek out that survivor who is stalking the Unknown trying to remove their weaken from distance. I would also like to add a mechanic where if the Unknown teleports to a hallucination, basically entirely removing the hitbox of the character, just stop the weaken removal entirely, just instantly. Because the killer isn't there anymore, so why should there be a lingering removal? And I've seen on Twitter that an idea to balance weaken removal is to make it so that it can only be removed while in chase, and I think that's a pretty nice idea. But, you know, spaghetti code for DBD is just not going to let it work. And another thing I'd like to change is to make it so that where if the Unknown is carrying a survivor, I want to have the maximum look range of removing your weaken from 25 meters to 16 meters. Primarily because if you pick up a survivor in the middle of an open space, any survivors that, you know, have half of a brain can just run up to the killer and just stare at the killer while they're carrying a survivor to a hook and hooking them. And they just get their weaken removal off for free. Lowering the range from 25 to 16 meters while carrying a survivor, you know, still allows a survivor to come close and remove weaken while the killer is carrying, but also adds an extra layer of risk where if a survivor gets too close, they risk being injured while the Unknown is carrying a survivor to a hook, or they can just choose not to be so close to the killer while carrying a survivor and wait until after the survivor has been hooked to then safely remove their weaken from a much farther range. And there's just so much more I'd like to change or add to this killer, but I'm just so angry with, like, just everything involving Kasu's release along with her, you know, power and add-on changes that there's just so much. There is so much. I'm just so mad. And I feel like that I just straight up feel like giving up on any hope of any meaningful changes to allow for skill expression and, you know, management of survivors in high skill lobbies. Oh, but don't worry, guys. We can look straight up now as the Unknown. That'll give a lot more, you know, clip potential on the harmless. Yeah, on the harmless. But on top of that, with vanishing, well, not vanishing box, I'm just angry in general. But on top of that, with Captured by the Dark being nerfed as is, and then Kasu having her iridescent add-on Chicken Head, making it so that survivors start in the leeched state 1 at the start of the trial. That's a very, you know, lovely add-on to have on this killer that's, you know, extremely fucking strong, to the point that even if you're not playing as Kasu, you're gonna get lobbies with survivors running, you know, strong medkits and equally strong toolboxes, and, you know, running extremely strong chase perks and running, you know, extremely other forms of strong perk builds and loadouts. Just Kasu's release currently is reminding me of 2023 DBD after Skull Merchant's release with the 3-gen meta, that if you didn't participate in the meta at all as either survivor or killer, you were just shooting yourself in the foot. It's the one meta I still say to this day is a meta that screwed over everyone. But, you know, that's in the past and that's been changed. But at this time, what is BHVR thinking? I'm so serious. What is BHVR thinking with this killer? Sure, we can agree that maybe Unknown is like a noob stomping killer, and I think that's fine. That is entirely fine and okay. There are other killers that are extreme, you know, brand new player stomping killers, like, you know, Nurse, who is bugged out of the wazoo right now, and it's completely unplayable to the point that I'm seeing, you know, people who play as her to demand BHVR to fucking kill switch her. And, you know, Blight, who has been one of the strongest killers in DBD since more or less his release back in 2020. And it's just becoming even more and more infuriating that this is even happening. It really is starting to feel like BHVR is just simply not listening to the player base and is simply refusing to consider genuine, well thought out, well put together, thoughtful changes to killers made by players who actually play the killer, who actually understand the power kit, who actually understand the mechanics, who actually spent all of this time to understand the nuances of their power, and in Unknown's case, you know, specifically bounce logic with UVX. This is also why I'm very frustrated with Kasu, specifically because if a survivor is anywhere close to her regurgitate projectile and it bounces off a vertical surface, then it just starts auto-aiming onto a survivor, and it's almost undodgeable in small spaces, such as 4-lane tiles, and it's just so infuriating. And I just genuinely wish and hope that, you know, something nice will change and happen to this killer that I have been playing since its PTB, that I have been loving and adoring since its release, and since its more or less inception to the video game. And it's really starting to feel like that the devs are just simply not listening to us. It really does feel like that. And it's also extremely frustrating because I want to make Unknown videos, but it's almost impossible to make any meaningful Unknown videos because I just can't seem to be consistent with the killer anymore. And this is simply, you know, a natural occurrence where, you know, the longer killer is in the video game, you know, the more consistent the player base will become with its counterplay. But due to the fact of how easy the counterplay of the Unknown is and how hard baked it is into its kit, just the counterplay is quite frankly spelled out for you with this killer's power. And it's infuriating and it's very sad. And while I do appreciate the agency survivors have against this killer, there is the very sad fine balancing point of adjusting the killer's kit to the agency of the player playing this killer. And it's really feeling like every update there's less and less agency being applied to Unknown, and that's what's making me the most upset about all of this. I just hope we can get more information, and hopefully I can get the ear of somebody from BHVR to fix this killer, because there are some extreme pain points of this killer's kit that are so infuriating and so frustrating to the point that it's really genuinely not feeling worth it anymore, because this killer's skill floor is quite high and the skill ceiling can be quite high, but the return of playing this killer and the time investment of this killer is extremely little. It is extremely small and very just inconsequential. It is entirely unrewarding, and it makes me just so sad. And that's my thoughts on this update for Unknown, and with Kasu being in the game in the world of being an Unknown main since Unknown's PTB of February last year. I'll list some other Unknown mains in the description down below. Aside from, you know, myself and Brandon, I've got DrSterben, I've got UnladenCrow, I've got Vampire Toothy, and I've got HonestPanda. I highly recommend you check these folks out. I don't know if UnladenCrow streams, but I know that the other folks that I have mentioned do stream, so we'll post their Twitch links down below and any YouTube channels that they may or may not have. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you folks in the next stream or video.